It's been 54 days since I've last hit 260 on the deadlift. That's a long time, man. That's a really long time, and something that I didn't see happening. There was a time some 60 days ago where I was hitting 260 twice a week. It was a regular occurrence. At least once a week I was kind of hitting it before this 50 odd day stretch. Today, I came in and I wanted 260. I had a good sleep last night after work, and I thought, okay, let's give it a try today. Once again, my positioning let me down. So this is now three attempts at 260 that have failed. And each of these fails, I feel, were caused by the same weaknesses. That frankly pisses me off. It pisses me off, and today after the gym, after the training session, straight back home, showered, and I went straight into the log. Luckily, I record all of my thoughts, all of my sets and reps and exercises. Whenever something significant pops out in my mind, I write it down. And so I went back through the training log, and I basically studied the period from that, maybe some 60 days till now. What I found was, and like always, it is very hard to draw these conclusions because there are many moving parts. But what was glaring to me from the training log study session, if you will, is that it coincides, this stretch of no 260 kilo deadlift coincides with me removing front squats from the program. Why did I do that? I've spoken many times about my love for front squats and how much I appreciate them. Every time I plug them in, I get lit up in my upper back, and I'm like, man, this has to be a staple. This has to be a staple. There was a time where I was, hitting 140 for like 10 singles and 10 doubles and all sorts of things like that. All of a sudden it drops off. So what did I replace it with? Well, I replaced it with this hamstring business sparked by Louis Simmons, podcasts, what do you want to call them, interviews, talks. And I decided to replace it, replace front squats with this idea, hunting this hamstring hypertrophy, hamstring strengthening. I identified hamstrings as a weakness. I went after them. I could not keep front squats in the program with all this hamstring work. You guys know I started off with good mornings. That progressed into these like conventional wide stance deadlifts or sumo deadlifts, the way I do them, really, really bent over. So I did all of that. Spent a lot of time on hamstrings, this way, that way. And front squats left me. And as the front squats left me and all that front squat effect decayed away from me, I started getting weaker and weaker in the deadlift. Now, I'm not saying I've become extremely weak in the deadlift. I've been hitting 240, I hit 251s, I think, in this stretch, but never 260. That 250 was also not a pleasantly looking or feeling rep. So something about front squats by the looks is making my deadlift strong. I've already mentioned it. I don't think the front squats magic is in the legs. I think it's in the upper body, the upper back specifically. The last 3 reps that I failed at 260, I felt my shoulders roll forward. And I've explained why I think this is really bad. It's like a domino effect. Your spine is like a lever. And when you collapse the end or the distal portion of that lever, it creates more tension for the middle portion of that lever, causing that to collapse. When the upper and when the distal and the middle portion of the lever collapses, then you have the proximal, or let's say the lower back portion, cops multitude fold increase in pressure. Once you collapse, the first thing is just like a domino effect. Now, once again, today, I felt that collapse in the upper body, and I felt the pressure in my middle back, and I just let it go. I let it go. I didn't want to fight. There's no point in fighting. You guys know where I stand with ugly reps, grindy reps, okay? If you want to do them in the competition, that's fine. It's okay to do them once or twice a year and all that kind of stuff, but in training, there is absolutely no value in you snapping a spine over a damn rep, which means nothing. It means nothing. You're not going to use that rep for your percentages. You're not going to use it for anything. It's just useless. Useless, arbitrary number that you write down on a piece of paper, which means more appearing. It appears more than it actually is. It's just an ugly rep. So I let it go. And basically, it kind of facilitated, it concluded this idea in my mind about the upper back. You guys saw in the first part of the video, I did some chin-ups. The reason why I did that and not pull-ups, because with chin-ups, I feel like there is a much greater stretch on the lats, even though a lot of people associate chin-ups for bicep biasing. I feel I'm able to unbias the biceps in the chin-ups, just simply pulling, with the elbows, essentially. I never feel, I guess it depends on how you do it, but I never really feel bicep action in chin-up. I feel it in my lats, especially the upper lats. After that, I did 5 sets of 5 with that, took it easy. I didn't really like how it felt. It felt really, really high up, like really high up in the armpit kind of portion of the lat. So I went over to the barbell and I ended up doing 5 sets of 30 empty barbell rows. And the purpose of that super high reps was to feel which part of my body is actually getting lit up. What's happening? Because I think I need to activate a little bit of lower part of the lat. Anyway, in my mind, I was basically going back and forth with this idea. Should I do a horizontal pull? Should I do a vertical pull? Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I don't know where I stand with this at the moment, but historically speaking, I've done a lot of pull-ups in my time, and I've done very, very little. If I had to put a ratio in it, it would be like 20 parts pull-ups, maybe half a part, 1 part rows. And whatever I hear all the time is, don't do rows because it's going to be too costly for your lower back. And when you screw your lower back, you're taking recovery points away from the deadlift and the squat. Today I thought to myself, well, everyone said you can't squat every day. Everyone says you can't deadlift every day. And I've done both of those things. So God damn it, I'm going to row every day. I'm going to be a freaking rower, squatter, deadlifter every day. That's the thought that happened to me. It's like I always go back to these, I don't know what you call them, these laws which are created by the universe of the fitness world that says you can't row or you shouldn't row. It costs you this, it costs you that. They also say you shouldn't squat every day. They also say you shouldn't deadlift more than once a week and all these types of things. So I went, screw it. I'm doing some rowing. I think the upper back is weak. When I look at myself in the mirror, especially from the profile, I can see I don't have a lot of mass in my upper back. Now, lats, right? Lats, I feel there is some there. I've always had these lats from the pull-ups. But I'm talking about like the upper back. I'm talking like traps, upper traps, middle traps, lower traps. I don't have that depth. I don't have that thickness. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, okay, vertical pulls, let's say pull-ups, hit your lats. I know that for a fact. I've lived with lots of pull-ups. Rows, hit your lats and your traps. So which one's better? Well, one hits lats. The other one hits lats and traps. Now, you could make an argument that pull-ups also hit your traps. Now, maybe everything hits everything, right? But I think there is a lot more load on the traps in a row movement than it is in a pull-up movement. When you are deadlifting, you're in a position of a row. You're bent over, kind of like a row. So there's specificity there. Makes sense that there's going to be carryover there. In a deadlift, it's not just about the lats, even though I've kind of emphasized the lats, pinching my shoulder blades down, pinching my armpits. That is a very important motion in my deadlift. I always emphasize it. I always unglue part of my ritual, setup ritual is I unglue or raise my shoulders to my ears, and then I really make sure I have that mind-muscle connection and I lock down. I lock down my lats, then I pull. That portion is very, very important. But the traps are also very, very important in the deadlift. They have influence over the scapula. They have influence over the scapula. It's a massive muscle. There's lower, middle, and upper traps. So right now I'm thinking I'm going to go down the path of rowing. You might be thinking to yourself, why don't you just go back to front squats, man? Just go back to front squats. I'm thinking about that as well, but I'm thinking, is there another way of putting more the trouble with the front squat is that it's a squatting motion. It's an isometric hold against your body caving in. And it's kind of like secondary function is the upper back. But I'm limited with the front squat because of the weakness of the upper back. So I'm thinking, why don't I just remove the squatting motion and just attack the upper body, the upper back part, rowing, pull-ups, that kind of thing. Really direct laser beam focus on the upper back, screw the squatting, all that, just upper back stuff. What do bodybuilders do to get the upper back strong? They row until the cows come home, and they do vertical pulls until the cows come home. I'm going to do that. These 54 days without squatting 260 is a concern for me. It's frustrating me because I remember then I was in a really, really good groove. Okay, it was a really good groove. And at the time, I was doing front squats and I wasn't really sure what part of the front squats is actually helping me. Now that I'm doing so much quad work, I don't need the front squats quad effect because I'm doing that with Hindu squats with these reps of 50 and all that. That's taken care of. I don't need front squats for that. So really all I'm really doing front squats for is for the upper back. Well, there's other stuff to do upper back directly. This is the thinking at the moment. This is what I want to do at the moment. I want to attack my upper back. Frequency, all of that, I'm not sure. You guys are thinking to yourselves like, man, you did an empty bar for set of 30. Then at the end of the video, you'll see here, I did a 40 kilo row, which is, I remember back in the day, I used to do, I think I got up to 140 kilo, heaps of cheating, rowing with, heaps of body English, inspired by Kayla Woolham. I don't know whether you guys know him. He went on Mark Bell's channel and he basically talked about what his best accessories were for deadlifting, and he spoke about these rows. I don't know what you call them. It's basically like a deadlift and a row mixed together. It's kind of like heaps of body English. Anyway, I got up to 140. So 40 kilos that I'm doing today is nothing, even though it's kind of strict, whatever, but I think I can do a lot heavier. So I'm just going to try and progress the row. I don't know how it's going to influence the squats or everything. This is the thing. It's so hard to mesh everything and blend everything together. It's super hard to do all of that. But I'm hoping to attack the upper back. So in my mind, I mean, this is the thing, man. This is the trouble of sports. This is the trouble of everything, really. You find a weakness in your body, you find a weakness on the field, you find a weakness on your team, right? Let's say defense is a problem in your football team, okay? So you identify that your strikers or your forward players are not doing their job, right? Let's use the forwards kind of like we're using the upper back, right? The forward line is not doing anything to contribute to the defensive effort when we don't have the ball. They're just standing around waiting for the ball so they can score. So what does that do? Well, at that point, it becomes 10 players. This is soccer we're talking about. 10 players, okay, against, let's say you have 2 strikers, against 8 players. Because 2 of your forwards are not even involved in the defensive effort. So what happens? Your midfield gets more pressure onto it because it's dealing with 2 extra players, right? They get overpowered. All of a sudden, the lower back gets overpowered, or the back line gets overpowered. So when you're thinking about, replacing weaknesses, one way is to think, okay, we need to strengthen the back line. Let's spend trillions of dollars getting the best center back in the game. So you do that, and you still have trouble because you're still outnumbered by 2 players. Sometimes it's very, very difficult to isolate the weakness, to kind of find a way to address that weakness. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. So in my mind, in my team, I have squat and deadlift. And these two things are very related, kind of like the front forward line, the middle line, and then the back line, center backs. They're all related. Squat and deadlift are related. But some things that I change will influence one and the other, maybe in a negative way. So if I change my formation and I put an extra player at the back, well, that makes the other guy, the forward line, suffer because there's not enough players forward. I'm trying to use an analogy, trying to paint a picture for my own self, trying to understand this. I'm going to go to rows now, okay? For the sake of addressing my upper back. But the rows is going to take a lot of recovery points, let's say, that might take a lot of recovery points and decrease my squatting ability and maybe even my deadlift ability while I'm chasing this damn weakness. So it's really, really hard. In my mind, I try to separate these two ideas into squatting thoughts and deadlifting thoughts. And I kind of run down the list of how do I go about improving the squat? How do I go about improving the deadlift? And I have like dot points in my mind, what I think the emphasis should be for the next week or next 2 weeks of training. This is the emphasis. This is the idea. This is what I think is going on. This is what's going to help me. For the deadlift, this is what's going on. Da, 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 da. So in my mind, I'm kind of running these type of scenarios, but they're not in a vacuum. They're kind of very much related. And there's a lot of carryover of thoughts between the two. So this row business is going to address the upper back. You also need the upper back in squats and the deadlift. And how it's going to impact me and maybe my lower back, I'm not sure. But this is where I'm headed. So I could go back to front squats. But I've chosen to do the upper back stuff first to see if I can isolate the problem, the weakness, if I can really put a spotlight on it and maybe expose it and to see the effects. When I went back through the journal, reading through the thing, I'm kind of looking for patterns, looking for ideas, looking for all this stuff. And I spent a lot of time doing hamstrings and I didn't really see an improvement either in my deadlift or my squat. And I did a lot of reps. There was time where that's the whole freaking thing I did for the whole week. That was the emphasis. I don't really see any benefit of it. This is 50 days, 60 days we're talking about. Since COVID, so when did I have COVID? Maybe like 2 weeks ago. Up until COVID, I was doing, the whole hamstring kind of business, sumos, good mornings, all that. Stopped after that. The last 2 weeks, I haven't done that. I've been focusing on these high rep squats. So at least 40 of those 60 days, the hamstring was an emphasis. And I don't like the effect that I had. Sometimes you just have to look at and be honest. For somebody out there, you might have hit the nail on the head, directly. Because maybe that weakness was your weakness. For me, I'm going to try and focus on the upper back for the sake of the deadlift. And I'm going to continue doing the Hindu squats, the high volume sets of 50 for the squatting. So squatting is going to be high reps. Deadlifting is going to be all about upper back work. That's what I'm thinking right now. I might be mistaking again, but I want to get back to that idea of progressing my deadlift. I want to hit 260, man. Like, come on, man. It's been 50 odd days. Too long. Something's going afray. Something's going amiss. I have to identify, I have to change. And that's the process, man. That's the learning process. Sometimes it's painful. But in the last 50 days, I don't feel like I've improved in the deadlift. Today, 260 is just, I don't know. I'm having great difficulties getting the damn bar off the floor. Great damn difficulties. And my quads are feeling great right now. They're on the map. They're on the map. But my shoulders keep rolling forward. Well, damn shoulders, you're going to cop it right now. I'm going to get after you. I'm going to get after the damn shoulders, that rear delt, upper back, traps, lats, smoke. I'm going to smoke that shit. I see so many people that have poor leverages for the deadlift. They're freaking starting horizontal to the damn or parallel to the floor. Bang. They just pop off the floor. And you look at them, they look like damn wrestlers with their traps up to their ears. Thick upper back. But some of these guys are so explosive off the floor, and then they get to like the lockout and they struggle. And I'm like, man, I wish I had that problem, man. I wish I had that problem. But for me, man, once it gets to like mid shin and up, it's easy, man. I'll look anything out. So what are they doing? Upper back, let's get after it. I've got a name to mention. Raul Sina is the name that popped up last night, I think it was. Appreciate you, man. It's a blessing. It's a blessing to have your support. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to go on and, support me in this way through Patreon. You join now, a whole bunch of people on Patreon right now supporting me in this community, brainstorming. I love the comments. You guys are stimulating me like crazy, man, thinking about all these things. Yesterday's video about the slow and fast twitch fibers, I learned a whole bunch. There's some of you guys that are freaking scientists telling me exactly, what's going on, how you can bias one or the other through training. Love that. So I appreciate you guys in the comments and on Instagram. I'm kind of falling behind a little bit, especially with work, working all the time now. But every chance I get, I jump on and try and see if I can talk to somebody. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.